Hey, everybody. It's been a while since I did a proper monologue, and I've just mostly been live streaming, trying to get done what needs to get done to cover the material for the convening conference as responsibly as I can. For better, for worse, I just feel like it's my obligation to use the platform to put the right people in front of you and cover the right ideas. And one of the primary things that people have been concerned about going into the convening conference is bishops, the episcopacy. It's not something that I am the number one person to feel strongly about, but it is something that I've learned to care about, and mostly because people in the GMC care about it, and I want to be of service to my brethren. What's there to say about bishops anymore? I've already hosted interviews with Jay Therrell representing the Florida plan and Matt O'Reilly representing the TLC Superintendency program. I interviewed Bishop Scott Jones yesterday, and I've definitely written my share of stuff on the episcopacy, though not really from the nerdy procedural standpoint that maybe is needed. The delegates are going to be meeting in San Jose starting on Friday. They're going to be participating in legislative committees, and there's one committee in particular that's dealing with this question of bishops, the Legislative Committee on Episcopacy. A couple of the candidates for the 2-year episcopacy are on that committee, which is a problem for some. Before I get into the reasons why, I wanted to try and briefly sum up why it is that it's probably a mistake to be putting any new bishops in place at this convening conference. I understand a lot of people are very excited about it, but just because people are excited and hopeful about it does not mean it needs to happen. It doesn't mean I'm doing anybody wrong by saying, hey, we need to pump the brakes. And this isn't sour grapes about anything on my end. I very much like many of the candidates, although I am disappointed that so many of them fell in line. Whatever, that's water under the bridge. That's not what this is about. What this is about is, I think a lot of harm can be done when you're trying to do something too fast, when you just got a picture in your head. I got an 8-year-old girl, she just gets a picture in her head about how something needs to be or something she's going to say, and it doesn't matter what you throw in her way, she's going to do it. And oh my gosh, it's so annoying. But what's worse is when adults behave this way. And I know it's kind of an unholy metaphor, but what's kind of coming to my head as a metaphor for what we're doing right now is, I don't know how many of you started dating in junior high, but I remember it was a thing growing up that, it was regular that boys and girls would pair off and then they'd be going steady or whatever. They'd be dating for a little bit and then they'd break up, and then you had to publicly process this in front of everybody's looking, is he upset? And so a very common thing to do was to get broken up with and then immediately have another girlfriend. They can just say, oh, I don't even care about her. I got my girlfriend now. And it feels very much like the same thing to me in the Global Methodist Church, where we just went through this really bad experience in the United Methodist Church. It's over, and we could experience being single for a time and maturing on our own and developing and making sure that before we get into another relationship, we know who we are, what we're about. We could do that, but there is this inclination that many have to just go ahead and get into another relationship. Just go ahead and formalize something so we have some structure and we can save face. Feels that way to me. I don't know if that really is the best metaphor for what's going on here and now, but it does feel like, man, we're really pushing this really hard and fast. Why are we doing that? And so I wanted to lift up. I have 7 reasons why it is that it's probably not wise to go this fast. And I think for a lot of people, they're going, what are you talking about fast? The GMC's been around for a couple of years. We have a career a body of work to look at for each person going back a while. We've taken plenty of time with this. We should be able to do this now. And respectfully, you're wrong. So one of the things that people have said is let's just get into the reasons. There are 7 reasons why it's a bad idea for us to go ahead and have bishops. We should definitely wait till 2026. And the more I think about this stuff, the more clear it becomes. And I hope the delegates increasingly see this. Yes, it would be nice to go ahead and have bishops. And to be clear, I agree that the church, in order to be a biblical church, needs to have bishops. We already have 3. Now that Johanna's joined up, we have some bishops emeritus, but even so, we have 3 active bishops. but do we need more? And I'm going to say yes, just not yet. Just not yet. And we need to be patient, and we need to focus on some other stuff first. And so that'll get clear as I go through the 7 reasons. The number one reason that I don't think a lot of people know is there was not anything resembling a proper vetting process going into the selection of the candidates, sifting out those 5 that were duly nominated by their annual conferences, holding on to those they did on the first round. Then the second round, there wasn't any vetting at all. There was just the nomination process. And this is confirmed by TLC leadership that I've spoken to. They said we had a timeline we were on that we were trying to stick with, and it didn't allow for us to look back years and consider complaints brought against them or any of this stuff. All we had was a 2-page document on each. We sat down, we read the documents, we took a vote. Those were our candidates. And I love and appreciate the people on the TLC. I do. I respect them. I don't at all want to cast aspersions at them, but that is not how things should be done. There needs to be a formalized vetting process where everybody's examined thoroughly. We've seen the damage that bishops can do. We don't want to replicate that. Now, granted, in my interview with Scott Jones yesterday, he was very clear that the power dynamics of bishops in the GMC don't resemble that found in the UMC in every single way. But I was still pretty clear that there's a great deal of influence. And anytime you have people that can work part-time or full-time, whereas the rest of us are focused on other contexts, that means that ground can be gained by them that we can't get back. So it seems very unwise when nobody in that position has been vetted to then go ahead with the process. They were too hurried to have a vetting process. We should be pumping the brake and saying, look, until we can do this right, we should not do it. I've had Episcopal candidates talk to me and say, there are people in the process who are definitely power hungry and they're definitely positioning themselves for this. I've had 2 say that, and I haven't talked to all of them privately. And then there have been accusations, whisper campaigns against a couple of the candidates that, it can be said one way or the other. It's already getting so not good. Just when you get to conference, say, hey, it's a good idea. Let's do it in 2 years. Personally, where I'm at, I see the good stuff about the Florida plan. I'm personally partial to the superintendency plan, but not if it begins next week, not if it begins this year or next year. 2026 needs to be the year that we begin. The reason number 2 is the position as imagined right now of bishop is that of a teaching bishop, one who's teaching doctrine and defending the Methodist understanding of any number of theological issues. But that's putting the cart before the horse if we get the bishops in place right now, because we are not collectively on board with much theology together. I know Bishop Jones, in my conversation with him yesterday, said this is a much smaller tent. I'm not sure that's actually true. What I think the GMC is made up of is people who just got fed up with the UMC, either because of organizational issues or because they just went way crazy to the left. But just because we have a problem with these 2 things does not mean we're all on the same page theologically. I'm not sure we have a shared doctrine that we can appoint bishops to teach at this point. I think there needs to be a prolonged 2-year period of figuring out our doctrine and really studying what our grassroots believes, what the academy believes, sure, but what our clergy believe. We need to see what everybody actually believes. So I just thought of a few areas. If Matt O'Reilly and I talked about this in our interview, if you want to watch that. But there are several different things that I see no clarity on whatsoever in Global Methodist leadership that I would like clarity on before we have bishops responsible for teaching what we believe. One, the ethos of frugality, simplicity, humility. This is something that was very common and taught in early Methodism. I don't think that's what everybody in leadership values, and I think we need to have a conversation about that before we start elevating bishops to be modeling Methodism for others. Well, I'm not sure they can do that. What about the doctrine of original sin? How many would be comfortable saying that we are born wretched and depraved, wicked sinners deserving of damnation? And then how many would use language more like, oh, we're kind of messed up. We just need some adjustments from Jesus. These are not the same theology. 3, How many of our bishops are going to teach entire sanctification, that God's grace is more powerful than our sin, that the Holy Spirit is able to save us to the uttermost this side of heaven? That was once upon a time called the grand depositum of the Methodist doctrinal heritage. Sacramental theology. Are we really all on the same page about infant baptism? Are we really all on the same page about whether or not we have an open table or should have an open table? The doctrine of atonement. How many Global Methodists confess penal substitutionary atonement versus, I don't know, Christus Victor or moral exemplar? I forget the names of all of them. But what's our understanding of how atonement works? And do we need to be on the same page about that? Eschatology. What are the last things going to look like? Are we premillennial? Are we amillennial? Do we need uniformity on these things? How do we engage in a world that's kind of nutty about premillennialism? I'm kind of premillennial. I think I'm changing on this. John Wesley felt a certain way. Does it have any implications for dispensationalism? These are things that we need to be thinking and talking about. Am I comfortable with a bishop representing me publicly on these things if we don't have any official doctrine on it? Finally, and maybe the elephant in the room, biblical hermeneutics. Do we believe in inerrancy? Do we believe in a thoroughly metaphorical reading? What are the bounds and the consensual tradition? These are things that are being argued about by very intelligent and conscientious people. But here's what's going to happen. If we don't have this period of conversation right now, we're going to put bishops in place, and then they're going to defer to the academy, and the academy is going to do what the academy does. And I love the academy, but the academy should not be leading the GMC. Reason 3, the bishops we have are not exhausted. So it'd be one thing if Jones and Webb and Johanna were saying, actually I think Johanna is going to step down, but if Jones and Webb were saying, we're stretched too thin, if y'all don't hire some new bishops, we're out. I asked Bishop Jones very directly yesterday, if we don't get any new bishops, can you guys do this for another 2 years? And he said categorically yes. So he said, obviously there are going to be some costs that come with that. We're not going to be able to do all that could be done with more bishops. But even so, the last 2 years haven't been bad. We've been gaining plenty of steam, plenty of a sense of identity. If we kept that going for 2 more years, there's no reason why we couldn't do that. Point 4, the bishops that we have are sufficient for the immediate future. So yes, there are things that we need bishops for, in particular establishing relationships with other denominations. Yes, we need that. We can do that without that for 2 more years. We're going to have conference superintendents over the coming couple of years. That's all we need, really. So there's no immediate need for bishops that I can see that anyone has been able to articulate to me. Point 5, the potential for harm is greater with moving too fast than with moving too slow. If we move too slow, then hypothetically, there are definitely costs, sure, but if we move too fast, the threat is that we get people with positions of power that we can't watch all the time, that haven't been vetted, that can have their own ideas about how things need to be, that are operating before we get some of the structure in place that is needed for them to operate responsibly. There's just way too much that can go wrong here. There's way too much that can go wrong here. I think it's unwise. Point 6, conference superintendents and annual conferences are sufficient for the moment. In fact, I would say that we need to allow them to figure out how they work before the bishops come in and guide them. I think there needs to be a reclaimed regional ethos, feeling, identity that's connectional in nature, yes, but I don't think we need the connectional presence of the superintendency of bishops immediately. I think we can actually create very strong conference superintendents and conference leadership, and that would actually be great before bishops step in. I think it would actually prevent them from stepping in and taking too much power up front. And then here's the final one, and it might sound pithy or whatever, but I'm serious about it. The laity is what needs attention right now, not the episcopacy. The episcopacy is fine, and the clergy are largely fine. The laity are in tatters, and that's primarily my audience that I've spoken to on Plain Spoken. I know a lot of clergy are going to watch this and go, wait, what? The laity? the laity are for many an afterthought. But I think, here in this equation, you've got the laity and the clergy, and you've got the episcopacy as a subset of the clergy, but they're the tail that has wagged the dog in the United Methodist Church. Methodists are really great about talking about Methodism being a lay-led movement, but then letting the clergy take the lead. And there are ways in which clergy have to lead, absolutely. But the laity do not have a clear picture of how to lead in this time. I think the laity need to be given time and space to design their own leadership before superintendency steps in and does what it does. I think we need to put our attention to the most harmed, the most weak parts of the church first, to buttress them so that when those that are stronger step in, that there can be a healthy balance of different perspectives as we lead the church together. So I don't know what to say to you if these 7 things are not persuasive. I don't think there are any just dead ringer answers for why we need bishops right now. I think there are 7 at least very good reasons for why it is that we should back off for right now. What I would exhort, if you are a delegate to the Convening Conference, I would exhort you, especially if you're on that legislative committee with episcopacy, is just to exercise patience. And then, maybe there are some half measures. I've heard about, hey, maybe we just don't let anybody run who, we make it so they cannot run in 2026 no matter what. We change that rule. Maybe we just get some bishops for Africa for growth and not for America. I've heard of stuff like that. I found that convincing until it's, well, we're going to have conference superintendents, so we're going to have leadership. We need leadership, and we're going to have it. I just don't think there's any good reasons for it, and I think there are a lot of good reasons against it. So for that reason, I know some people think it's tacky for me to sit in my little studio here in Oklahoma and tell people in Costa Rica what to do, but I've been watching this for a long time, and I think I'm right, and I think it would be to everybody's benefit, and it would be wrong for me not to say that publicly. So I hope this at least helps you think more clearly about it. If you know anybody else who is concerned about these questions, I know a lot of people are. I don't know how many of you read Chris Ritter's thing on the Free Methodist Church, but he was talking about all the people that have been congregations that have been trying to figure out a place to be. And as I've been looking at other denominations, the thing that they've asked questions about even more than the gay stuff is about bishops. A lot of people are very concerned about this. I think if we're going to do it, and I think we should do it right, and we need 2 more years to do that right. So I would urge you to agree with me. All right, I'll see you later.